My name is Steve Macias with the Organization for Minorities of India, and today we have the daughter of Sikh activist Jaswant Singh Khalra, who went missing after he began investigating the activities of the Indian government and the disappearance of activists and their families. Navkiran, we have you here today to talk about your father, to talk about the 20th anniversary of his disappearance and how that's impacted you, your family, and what his legacy means for the Sikh people. Could you just briefly tell us what happened 20 years ago? What were the conditions that led to his disappearance?
So if I just start with his whole activism story. My father, he was born in 1952 in a very remote area of Punjab. It's a border village. It's right next to India-Pakistan border. So he grew up being an activist. As a student, he was an active student union leader. He actually formed small unions within his village and even his college for students to get involved in political fields.
What was his motivation for getting involved in politics in general? Was his purpose religion or the conditions in India? What was happening?
It was more of a social conditions in India at that time. So he was very much inspired by Bhagat Singh. He's a martyr of Indian independence. So, and then while as a student, when he graduated, he started working for the local village panchayat or the governing body in the villages.
Yeah.
And even there, he was less of an employee than a union leader. And then eventually he moved to the city where my mother, so they got married in 1981 in August. And my mother was a librarian. So she worked in a university library in Amritsar, in Punjab. So they both moved there to start a better life, to earn their livings. And I was born in the city. My brother, we both were raised and we went to school in the city itself.
So you said that was in 1981. Did they stay through the Sikh Massacre that happened in 1984?
Yes, they did. So my mother was they moved to the city in 1985. But my father, he actually was in my mother's parents' house when June 1984 happened. And he wasn't involved in the Sikh struggle at that time. He was...
but he definitely witnessed what happened there.
He did. He actually was very much distant to the things that was happening at that time. He was aware of what's around the surrounding, what's going on in Punjab. And as soon as he heard the news, he was like about 200 miles away from Amritsar. Punjab is not a very big state, so 300 miles. And as soon as he heard the news, and at that time it was only radios or televisions and everything was blacked out. So it was only, I think, BBC radio from where they were getting news. So he said that he wanted to go back home, which was near Amritsar. The village is also like about 50 kilometers, less than 40 miles away from the city. So everyone tried to stop him because it wasn't safe to travel in Punjab during those days. It was curfew all around. But he did leave. He took a bicycle, like a bike, and he traveled 200 miles, like through the villages, just to reach his own home, because there were rumors that as soon as the Bar Sahib or Golden Temple will be attacked, Pakistan will attack India. So since they were living right at the border, so he was also worried about what's going to happen next. And my mother told us that when he was trying to cross a river, there were many other people, like he saw people just marching towards Amritsar because every Sikh was hurt when their holiest shrine was under attack. Every Sikh wanted to go to Amritsar.
Right, so this Golden Temple that was attacked in 1984 is kind of the center of Sikhism. So this is in his mind as an activist. Fast forward a little bit to his activism that he's more famous for. He's now a banker, and he's noticing that some of his fellow employees are disappearing. What's going on there?
So this is like early 90s, in 1990, 1991, I would say. He started working in a bank in Amritsar, and two of his colleagues, like they were good friends, they disappeared one after the other. And he kind of, when on his own level, he tried to investigate what happened to them. From his family, he knew which police officer actually took them, and he found out that both of his colleagues were cremated within Amritsar, because they were from Amritsar, and they were picked up in Amritsar and killed somewhere, and then they were cremated in a cremation ground that was actually run by a mandir, Sitla Mandir. So most of the Sikh bodies were cremated secretly in the cremation ground that was run by a Hindu mandir.
Okay.
So he went there and he asked them about the whereabouts of his friends. So the people who were working there, they had no idea what's going on. They just knew that police bring truckloads of bodies, sometimes just one or two, to this cremation ground, and all our work is to cremate them.
Okay.
And it's a rule, it's a law that if there's any dead body found within the city and nobody claims it, so the government actually cremates the body on its own expenses. So the police was bringing these bodies, and obviously this was secret disposal, and so they actually used the government funds to get the woods to cremate those bodies. So in India, cremation is done with the logs, with the woods.
Right. And the idea is here is that the government is using this cremation program to hide what they're doing, which is...
Yes, they don't want to return the bodies to the families, because this becomes a bigger issue, and all the sympathizers for the Sikh movement or even the families would get united, or it would actually create a bigger revolt within the Punjab state itself, because it was already going through a struggle at that time. So they just abducted people, killed them, and when he saw those, when those employees told him that the only way he can figure out something is to go through that register which the local government body has to maintain to issue the woods.
Right.
So because if you have to cremate an unclaimed body, you need to mention it, that where did you find that body, and
right, because this is part of the government providing for it.
Yes. And what he noticed was that those police officers were so shameless, or you can say they did not realize how much big error they are committing by writing their own names, that this is the officer who is bringing in the body. And there were more than 2,000 bodies, 2,097 actually, where they actually put on the name of the deceased, the dead, on the register, and his father's name and his village, and approximate his age.
So you have a group of people who are supposedly unclaimed, yet the police officer knows their names, their village, their fathers, and are intentionally
and
destroying
then
the
at the end it's unclaimed.
Interesting.
And they did not, because if there's any unclaimed or unidentified body, the law says that you have to keep the body's clothes or some pictures, so that even if after a certain time the family comes to claim it, you have to show the proof that the person is dead. So they did not keep any record for those who were cremated.
Your father finds this register, sees that things aren't quite adding up, and that this is kind of suspicious. What does he do?
So it was a full team who was working on these human rights issues. There were people involved from the international community as well, and from other parts of India too. So they all went together to the cremation ground, and somehow they were able to sneak out the data and make copies of that. And after that, they started contacting the families from that list. And as soon as they started reaching out to those families were so intimidated. They were so scared to speak out. They were like, our loved ones are still alive. There's no proof they're dead. And if you ask us to go out and either file a complaint or go to the courts, they're going to kill us too. So nobody was ready to go to the courts at that time. It was so much of state terror that...
Right. I mean, obviously their family have been missing for some time and have been shown evidence that they've been cremated.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people are we talking about here that the Indian government is secretly destroying and disappearing? What's the number?
So from 1990 to 1992, there was more than 6,000 bodies that he found out only in 3 cremation grounds of Amritsar. And you can imagine there are 12,000 villages in India, in Punjab. And my father's estimate, based on how the encounters were going on around Punjab, it was about 25,000 people would have been secretly cremated, for whom we can actually get the proof. And there would have been more people who were disposed of in the water, in the rivers, in the drains, because you cannot keep the record for the people who are thrown.
Right, so we're talking tens and tens of thousands of people who are disappeared without any record.
Yes.
So what does your father do now? He has this information. Who does he go to?
So there were committees formed with the lawyers, and he tried to convince few families, and the case actually started in the High Court of Punjab. But High Court denied the petition, saying that this is not a public interest litigation. So you have to bring out those families and tell us whose body belongs to which family. So my father was very upset with this response from the judiciary. This is the highest court in the state, saying that this is not a public interest when you see 6,000 bodies.
Right.
And then he actually took about 40 to 50 families actually were ready to file a complaint in the High Court. So they filed complaint by name. They knew the police officers, and they went to High Court and they filed the complaint. And then the state machinery, the police of the state, actually got really upset when they had the cases filed against them by name.
Right.
And my father kind of knew that these families will be intimidated. One thing I remember, he got his visiting cards printed at that time. And whenever he used to visit those families, he used to say that, okay, just in case any police officer or any political person comes to your house and say that you shouldn't be filing any complaint against the police or against the state, just tell them that we didn't do it. This is the guy who did it. Just go and talk to him.
Interesting. So your father, to pardon the parallel here, but the situation is very similar to like the southern United States during the civil rights movement. You have people being killed and attacked, and your father's a Martin Luther King type figure who's going into these communities and identifying the victims and really taking that burden and responsibility and risking his own life to bring them justice.
Mm-hmm.
What's been the response to the courts, to the country? What's happened since then?
So at that time he realized that if he brings out everything within India or within Punjab, nothing is going to happen. He'll be one of those unidentified bodies very soon. So that was the point when he knew that probably he's going to get killed, but it would be better that if I get killed, but I still give some identity to these unidentified bodies, so that people should remember that these were some Sikhs who may or may not have been part of the struggle, but were killed and disposed secretly by the state. This was a mass human rights violation, grave human rights violation on part of how they got killed, and also how the family was not given the last rites.
Right. So what's the response from the international community? Does he contact other countries? What happens?
I think at that time even the diaspora Sikhs were quite active, and they also wanted some proof to show to the international community that this is what is happening with the Sikhs in India. And also there were some lawyers and some other human rights groups who were interested to work in Punjab, but I remember Human Rights Watch and other human rights organizations were actually banned in Punjab. They were not allowed. So they were looking for contacts who can bring the data out.
Right.
So my father actually found some contacts in Canada, and it was a MP in Canada. She invited him in April 1995 for a human rights event, and it was Justice Ajit Singh Vance, with whom my father had to accompany. And at that time, my father realized that this is the time I can take this out and just bring it in front of the whole world. So he went to Canada. He shared his documents with the local MPs where he was invited, and there was even the Indian community, the Sikh community, who were keen to know the facts. So he met multiple people. Previously, what was happening, that the community was just involved within themselves. They shared their grievances within the community and were not going out with different other communities and just bringing the matter up with international human rights organizations. So my father knew that this is not going to work if we want other people to empathize with us or sympathize with us.
Right.
So we need to go out. We need to reach to those people. So he then he was in Canada, and he actually started getting death threats at that time. So he went back in April. He was here for a very short trip, and actually he came to Canada on a permit from the politicians. So he didn't apply for visa. It was the government approval, and he just came.
Where is his family from? Where are you? Where is your mom?
So we all were in Amritsar, in our city. My mom was working. And
so what's it like? Your dad's getting death threats, and he's all the way across the continent. He's 3 continents over in Canada. Is there fear in your home? Do you remember any of that?
So the thing is that I remember my mother being worried. I remember my grandfather being worried. My grandfather and my grandmother were living in the village. So when my father came back from his April trip, my grandfather actually was concerned when my father visited him in the village. And he said that I don't want to be in the courts or police stations after you if they come after you. And my father replied that I'm not running away anywhere. So if they come for me, they'll take me, they won't touch me. And that's the same thing he told my mom, that nobody is going to harm your children or you. They just want me and they'll come for me. And he was aware of what's going to happen to him, and he was prepared. And he also realized that this is something that is needed to leave a mark, or you can say, like, to prove his point, or that this is the violation of human rights that actually happened, or the massacre of Sikhs that was going on since 1978 or 1984.
Right.
So he knew that he has some facts, and to prove those facts, maybe he has to give up his life.
Now, did he expect to give up his life? Was it something that was a real thing for him, or?
If I go back before, by April 1995, from June 1995, he was prepared. But it wasn't something that he wanted to die.
Right.
So
right.
He wanted to live. He wanted to live, and he wanted to enjoy his life, his kids. But the thing is, there is sometimes a point in life when you know that this is the right cause, and this is something worth dying for, and that's when he realized. So when he came back in April, and I would say rather when he came back after June, he was asked by his friends in Canada not to go back, because some people from India had contacted them that don't send this man back because the government is going to kill him. And one of the local politicians contacted my grandfather, and he said that the police officers are saying that if he's asking us to answer for 25,000 people cremated, we don't mind giving account for 25,001. So these kind of threats were normal to the family by this time. Right. And on our landline phone, he used to get calls at midnight, and just to check where he is. And by that time, he started staying more at home at nights. He used to travel to other cities or to visit the families, but he tried coming back home. And he denied for security. Most of his friends from High Court, they asked him to get the security. But he said that what of those families who are trusting me to file the complaints, and when they see the security guards with me, they won't do it.
Exactly.
So
give us the events that led up to his disappearance.
So on August 30th, so he came back in July, late June, July. So that's 1 month, 2 months after his arrival from Canada. During all these 2 months, he was busy meeting families and trying to file more cases. On August 31st, the then Chief Minister of Punjab, Jaswant Singh, was assassinated in Chandigarh. He was home. I remember that day. It was evening, around 7 p.m. So the national news in Punjab used to be broadcasted at 7 p.m.
Okay.
And that's how we were walking down a street, and in a store nearby, in a small shop, there was a TV going on, and they were broadcasting this news that the chief minister has been assassinated. And my father was like, "Let's go home immediately."
Now this would be a cause for concern because this would lead to riots or political uproar.
Yes, and he knew some of his friends or people living nearby will be picked up, because police always kind of try to find some reason to just abduct people on any basis. So it actually happened. Some of his colleagues were picked up just for the inquiry, and he knew that something can happen even to him because police was already looking for him. So 6 days after that, on September 6th, he was getting ready for a press conference in Amritsar itself. So he was washing his car outside the house, and he was to be at a press conference around 11. And this is a weekday. I guess it was a Wednesday. So my mother leaves for job around 8:45 because her job starts at 9. And she works in the university library, which is like 15-20 minutes walk from our house, so she normally walks. And myself and my brother were at school, so the cops actually had surrounded the area early that day, and it was pretty normal to see that much police around your house. Not house, I would say, around the area you're living in.
Right. In and around the village. Yeah.
Yes. So at that time, my mother wasn't suspicious because that was normal. You see police all around. So, but she kind of felt odd when some of the police officers actually stared at her when she was walking, as if to confirm that she left. And they actually thought that nobody would be home and we just abduct him and that's it. But luckily, one of his friends who was to accompany him to the press conference was sitting inside the house in the living room. So he was washing his car, and some police cops just came in a blue van. It wasn't a police van, but a civil van, and they tried to show him some papers. So he left his he left his car over there, and he just went to them to read the paper or something, and they pushed him in the car. He tried to resist, but they kind of pushed him. There were 6-7 men, so they pushed him in and they just drove by. So few of our neighbors saw it, and the guy who was sitting inside the living room, when he heard the noise, he just came out and he saw, and he actually recognized few of the police officers. And after that, he called my mother, and she was immediately sent back home. And then they both went to the local police station to report it. And I remember when we came back home after school, so my brother told me what happened, and I couldn't it was hard to believe that something like this could happen, because my father was never involved in any kind of crime, you can say. We had never seen police coming to our house before, and this was odd for me at that time, that why would that happen when your father isn't needed for anything. So
at this time, how old are you when this happens?
I was 10.
So you're 10 years old. You know your dad is important and he's meeting with different people in the community. Your brother just told you, police came and took Dad. Do you expect to see your father again, or is this like the disappearances he's been investigating?
So at that time, we thought that maybe they took him, because at that time I didn't understand the meaning of abduction. I didn't know how he was taken. So when by evening, the local police came to our house to write down the first information report, they call it FIR.
Right.
So at that time, my mother was trying to convince them with the names of the police officers whom she suspected would have taken him, but those guys were not ready to write the names. And they also did not write it in the FIR that the people who abducted them were in uniform. So they said some random guys came and just picked him up. So then my mother actually started contacting, so my father's 3 siblings, his brothers, lived in Europe. So she contacted them, and she contacted a few of his friends in Canada whom he visited, and in Chandigarh and New Delhi. And by that time, and even the local Sikh politicians whom she knew. So she filed the complaint with the local police, but they wrote whatever they wanted to write.
Right.
And then she went to Supreme Court of India. So she didn't go to the local courts, she didn't go to the High Court, the State Court, because she didn't had trust on the judiciary at the local level. So she went to the Supreme Court of India and filed the complaint on September 9th. So September 6th morning he's picked up. By September 9th they are in New Delhi, capital of India, to file the complaint. So it was by chance, by luck, that the case went to the bench of the judges. One of the judges was Kuldeep Singh. And this was a judge whom my father actually had met a couple of months ago in Amritsar to discuss this case. And this judge had said that I cannot do anything here. I'm just here for a seminar. You need to come to the Supreme Court. And when that judge saw that this is the same guy who came to me with certain cases, and I asked him to come to the Supreme Court, now he's missing. So somehow it clicked to him that this needs to be investigated on a bigger scale.
So did the Supreme Court take up his cause? Did they investigate? What happens? Is the Supreme Court there in India similar to our court, or what does it look like? What do they usually do?
When it comes to the minorities, it's biased, I would say.
Okay.
So Supreme Court in 1995 September, the case was being investigated by Punjab police.
Okay.
So it's the investigation against the police by the police. So what do you expect?
Right.
So, but in January 1996, Supreme Court moved the case to the Central Bureau of Investigation. It's like FBI. India has CBI. So then CBI started the investigation, and they were very reluctant to charge any of the police officers. All the police officers who actually got charged in my father's case were on duty till the last day of the judgment. So even if there were cases going on against them in the courts, nobody actually dismissed them from their jobs. And some of them even served in the areas near where we lived. So
was there a fear that there'd be retaliation?
There actually a lot of incidents happened. One of the key eyewitnesses who actually saw my father being abducted from the house was charged twice, being linked to terrorist organizations, and was picked up from a random marketplace, and but shown that he was actually planning some kind of a bomb blast. But luckily, the next day, the newspaper had his picture giving a memorandum to some international delegate visiting Golden Temple, and this story didn't go along.
Right. These were obviously trumped-up charges.
Yes, my mother was charged for bribing one of the witnesses, and they came up with a story that she tried to bribe him at his in-laws' house, and it was by chance that the reporters, the journalists, went to the in-laws' house and they asked, okay, what happened at your house? How much did she pay? And they were like, oh, nobody came to our house. So that also dropped.
Okay.
And
but obviously showing the Indian government is trying to hide
yes,
what's happening.
and they tried to intimidate. Even the government, the state government, tried to reach out to my mother, saying that we can pay you millions of rupees and just take off the case. It would be better for you, the future of your kids and for your own self. You can do whatever with the money. What will you gain by going after these police officers or the state in general? So when my mother filed the case against for the abduction of my dad, she also filed that why was he abducted. So the reason for his abduction is not just because he's a Sikh and he's politically involved. The reason was that he was trying to uncover something that the state is trying to hide. So she filed the case for those 2,097 bodies in parallel to Khalra abduction case. So these two cases started in Supreme Court, and Supreme Court marked the inquiry to CBI to investigate, to see that what this man, Jaswant Singh Khalra, is saying, is it correct or not? So CBI finished its inquiry saying that, okay, yes, this man actually said the truth. These people were cremated falsely and they were disappeared and their families were not told about. But what the government or the judiciary or the CBI did was they sealed all the records from all other cremation grounds in Amritsar. So till date, we do not have access to those. We do not know how many actually other dead bodies are there, which should have got justice. So Supreme Court of India actually there's a body within the judiciary of India called National Human Rights Commission.
Right.
So the case was passed over to National Human Rights Commission to do the compensation part of it, and then they said that they'll consider either to file criminal charges against the police officers involved. But CBI kind of delayed everything because the judiciary over there it works the way that either the victim dies or the accused dies. We don't have to solve anything.
Okay.
So it took 10 years of our time, or you can say, for the Khalra case, which was the high-profile case.
Right.
It had a lot of international pressure. Governments from US, from Canada, from England were actually writing to the Indian government to know the whereabouts of my dad. So even that case, which was so highlighted, took 10 years in the lower court, in the CBI court, to get first judgment, in which 7 people got punishment. Like it was 7 years for few of them, and two of them got capital punishment. Then this case moved to the High Court, and in 2007 the High Court changed the term to life for all, and then in 2011 this was presented to the Supreme Court of India, and it still stayed as life imprisonment. So you can say that it took about 18 years, 18 years to just do one case, and the other cases for 2,097 dead bodies is still pending with NHRC for those many years.
So do you think that justice has been done with these 2 life sentences?
So the thing is that it's not just about one person, one dead body. So they should be. So it's also not about those 5 or 6 police officers who got life term in this case, because it was the whole state machinery that was operating. It was the government involved. It was not those pretty cops or like officers who are working on the orders of someone sitting up high there, and then those people who are being guided by the central government sitting up in New Delhi. So this whole machinery needs to be exposed. We're not looking to looking to punish or to get imprisonment to those police officers. We wanted the state to accept that this is what they have done, and this was wrong.
Right.
So for that, we don't see anything happening as for now, and we are still having some cases like pending in the courts, but there's no hope.
So let's talk about your life the last 20 years of having to deal with this. How did your family survive with your father now out of the picture? How did you guys provide for yourself? What kind of impact did this have on you and your brother and your other siblings?
So I think this incident 20 years ago did change our lives. It totally changed how we thought we would be. Like if I go back 20 years from now, and if this did not happen, I would have been a different person. But this incident kind of also made us, you can say, we kind of realized that our role in the community, or even in larger community where we talk about human rights or basic rights for anyone, the role of the family is very important now. If we back off, then nobody is going to carry on my father's work. So it changed from that normal life to being a responsible family and being in the limelight all the time, and being brave enough to carry on the work that my father started. And if we didn't, then who would have done it?
Right.
So we were the first people who everyone would have been looking forward to see if we can carry on his work. And it wasn't just us, it was his immediate circle. He had very close friends who came forward, and they just said that it's not just a normal death. People die every day. People die of accidents or diseases, but this is something special, and we need to carry on the legacy. So we kind of grew up in that environment.
Right. Do you think that your father's a martyr?
I do think he's a martyr, and his work actually, so it's interesting to note that after his martyrdom, all the fake encounters, the way they were happening with the amount of dead bodies or custodial deaths or torture that was happening in Punjab just stopped. After that, you don't see that continuous chain of encounters reported in the newspapers. Like, it just put a full stop that this is the end.
Interesting. So there was some impact that came from his death.
Yeah, and he was aware of it. He knew that probably he has to give up his life to stop this.
What do you see as the next step for Punjab? Obviously, there are still lots of issues happening in that part of the country. What needs to happen in Punjab for things to change? What do the communities need to do? What does the government need to do?
I think if I just see totally unbiased from the government side or from the community side, we need proper closure of what happened in the past. So this will keep on happening if you don't close out chapters of the history that need answers, that need acceptance that this was wrong and this needed to be corrected. So if we do not accept the wrongs that if the government does not accept it, so it will keep on happening in one way or the other. And the other thing is that in India, I normally see that most of the time there are like all the minorities are being crucified. You see struggle in Kashmir, you see struggle in South, in Orissa, in Assam. These communities are not linked to each other, so they alienate each other when the other community is going through some kind of a trauma. 1984 happened, November 1984, when thousands of Sikhs were killed in Delhi. No other minority community in India spoke up that this is something that could happen to us, or this is something that this majority Hindu system is trying to do on any kind of a minority. So they didn't see that coming to them. And then 1992 Babri Masjid happened, and Bombay happened, and 2002 happened, 2008 Orissa, where Christians were killed. So there was a chain that continued, and I think this is one thing that minorities in India need to realize, that we need to connect, that we need to see that how the other minority communities, it is not religious, it is not gender-based, it is not caste-based. Any minority, it could be religious, caste minority, it could be gender minority, or any other type of minority, language-based or Adivasis. So these minorities need to connect. They need to empathize with each other. They need to support each other's struggle. So that was a missing part when Punjab went through the struggle, and I think it's still missing somewhere. We do not care about what's happening in other parts of the country.
Right, and that's largely a problem for us here in the United States. We don't care what's happening in other parts of the world. What advice would you give to Sikh diaspora, to other minorities that now find a safe home in the United States? How can we help people in Punjab who are facing a government that's against them? What should we be doing to be involved?
So first thing is never to buy the government propaganda against any of the struggling community. And the other thing is that we all in some way or the other have seen either not our generation or the previous generation go through some of the struggle, but somehow relate to that struggle and try to reach out to those families or to those people who are part of that struggle and bring it out in the world. It is, my father believed that it is very important to involve the international community. It is very important to let others know what you are going through, so that they don't become your enemies. They should be your allies. That they should join you instead of stand with your enemy or with the tyrant who's trying to diminish you. So I think that is very important for all the struggling communities, and even for people who care for human rights or for equal rights for everyone, for being a citizen of the world.
Right. So you live in the United States now.
Mm-hmm.
Does the rest of your family, do you still have any family left in Punjab?
Yes, my mother still lives in Punjab. That's another thing. My family decided not to leave India until we finish off the case. So that would be kind of running away, or we are scared of anything.
Right.
We did not take for any security. It was till 2011 the government and the courts of India had to send police to our house saying that you should take security. We feel there's a threat to your life. But we decided not to. We decided...
But even here, 20 years later, there's still threats and danger for your mother.
Yes, I mean, those police officers who are in jail do come out on parole, and they visit their families and they come on vacation, you can say. And the thing is that they do send threats. People who are in jail with them, their inmates, somehow do talk, and they do say that once we are out, we'll see what to do. But the thing is, we took the challenge, and we still do take the challenge. It was only after 2007 when High Court decided that my mom said, okay, now you guys, like me and my brother, if you want a better future, because somehow we were so much alienated with the system in India, we did not want it to work there, we did not want it to live there. So after 2007, once the case was decided, so she was like, now it won't feel like that you're fleeing from some kind of a struggle or a battle, like we actually fought till the end. Now you guys can go and think of your future.
Well, and from what I understand, that you have a family history that would feel very comfortable in this part of California. Your great-grandfather was part of the Gutter Party, which had a setup here in Stockton, which helped India grant its independence, and the Sikhs have always been involved with protecting and freeing India from oppression. So I think it's very appropriate that you are here in California. I think this is where Sikhs come to bring freedom back to India. So I think your message is very clear that you want equality and justice for all people. Mm-hmm. And I believe that your father would be very proud of what you're doing.